Well, welcome everybody. If you can put your headphones on. For those of you who do have your headphones on, can you hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. On that side as well, everybody's good? Okay, awesome. Well, let's begin. Ensure you're in the right talk first of all. There's still a little bit of time to switch to another talk if you're not in the right one. Please don't. Please stay, right? Just to give you an idea of what you let yourself in for, what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform, I suppose, mostly a demo of SageMaker Unified Studio as an application that is, so shall I say, published in the Identity Center application area to a data scientist or a machine learning user. I'm going to show you how to set all of that up, as well as some of the security-related items that go along with it that you saw in the blurb for this talk, which is what probably made you decide to come to this talk in the first place. My name is Carl. I've been an AWS technical instructor now for about 5.5 years. They do say you measure your experience at AWS in dog years. So you can do the math. We're going to do this in 3 parts. First of all, the why, the what, and the how. The why, well, why care about security with your machine learning workloads? The world, as you probably know, is getting to be a more and more dangerous place. And there is, I think, AI and machine learning in this world constitutes, to use a fancy term, a new class of target for threat actors. That sounds so sophisticated, doesn't it? Threat actors. And then we're going to talk about what you can do to protect yourself and the AWS tools that you need to do this correctly. And then finally, what I'm going to do is I will demo how to set up an environment. And then I'm going to just tell you how effectively, you know, when you do a talk, they say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And then I'm just going to drill in, or shall we say, kind of trying to hammer home the concepts that we talked about. So you have to do things to protect yourself. And the reason why you're doing it is because of these unique threats. There are some of the things that you will see in the so-called threat landscape that we're facing today. An interesting one I just want to point out there, I think it's the last one. It's something about, people will, try and get into your environment and then use your AWS account as an ATM machine to mine crypto. It's not the GPUs that they're after anymore. You know that. Is if you're mining something like Bitcoin, I think it's SHA-256 hashing. They now make ASICs that you can buy for $150 that will do over 1 terahash of hashing in an ASIC. We don't run that stuff in AWS. There's other cryptocurrencies. There's one in particular I can think of. They need raw CPU and memory power. It's not just the GPUs. Don't let somebody turn your AWS account into an ATM machine. Now, let's look at what you can do to protect yourself and the tools that you need. I'm just going to talk about this slide for a minute. These things are not new. They're not related to machine learning. They're not related to artificial intelligence. Those are the things that you have available in your toolbox to protect your machine learning workloads. And first of all, in identity and access management, I would beseech you, please familiarize yourself with the concept of a role in AWS. Okay? It is the center of the identity and authentication universe. If you don't know what the role is, you're not going to be able to configure or work with any of the stuff because everything identity is now done with roles. Okay, so absolutely ensure that you understand that unique AWS concept. When it comes to infrastructure and network security, you don't want to run your machine learning workloads inside of a VPC that's got an internet gateway and access directly to and from the internet. Probably you don't want to do that, right? So what are your options? Well, you have machine learning workloads running inside of your network, and it still needs to talk to AWS services. Or maybe it needs to talk to other things out there on the internet. How are you going to do that if you don't have an internet gateway? Well, we recommend there are 2 things that you can do. You can set up a VPC endpoint inside of your VPC, and that will enable the services in the VPC to talk to AWS services outside of the VPC. And if you need to access the internet, well, hook up your VPC to a transit gateway with a transit gateway attachment, and you set up your route table inside of one of your subnets inside of that VPC to go out to your default network. If it needs to talk to the internet, you can do that. Third, data protection. You know, I don't know if anybody ever had to go in a data center and try to do data encryption according to a standard like FIPS 140-4. Any of you ever had to do that? It's the Mines of Moria. You have to set up hardware security modules. We gave you the gift of the KMS service. You don't have to do that stuff anymore. Use it. Our Chief Technical Officer, Werner Vogels, has a t-shirt. It says, encrypt everything. You know, dance like nobody's watching, encrypt like everybody is. Make friends with the KMS service. It's an incredible service. It makes data protection so easy. I'll show you a little bit of that in the demo as well. As far as the model security is concerned, if you have models running inside of your AWS account and you take care of those three things, okay, those are probably three of the most important things that you have to take care of to ensure that you're secure. And lastly, don't forget about the logging, monitoring and auditing, the CloudTrail service. That's what it's made for. Everything in AWS, everything is an API call. And every single API call gets logged with the CloudTrail service. So learn to configure CloudTrail, use it, set up a trail, monitor everything that you need to keep track of. Go and set it up. Just using the default settings is probably not going to give you all the protection that you want, because it's only going to look at management events for the last 3 months. You probably want to go a bit deeper than that. One of the things I'm going to show in the demo here that specifically relates to CloudTrail is a new thing that we have introduced recently in AWS called Trusted Identity Propagation. And what that enables you to do with some services in AWS now, it's possible that, say, for example, you have an S3 bucket and you have some kind of a notebook running a machine learning workload and you're trying to read from that bucket and it's doing it by assuming a role. In the past, you had to go through this whole bunch of breadcrumbs and detective work to see, oh, so somebody accessed this bucket. Let's see, who was it and what did they do and when did they do it? Oh, it was a role. Okay, so now you have to go and, you don't have to do that anymore with Trusted Identity Propagation. And I'll show you how to configure it and I'll demo it for you as well. When it comes to SageMaker, how many of you are confused? It's like there's so many different SageMakers out there now. This is what you go to SageMaker service and it's like, what should I use? Okay, what I'm going to focus on in this particular presentation is a thing called SageMaker Unified Studio. And what SageMaker Unified Studio does is if you have a data scientist or a data machine learning engineer or somebody who needs to work just, preparing data, working with the foundation models and all of that stuff, it's a one-stop shop for them. It's a studio environment. If they don't want to learn AWS, they want to be an AWS admin and log into the AWS Management Console, you can give them an environment that they can use without ever having to go near the AWS Management Console. Everything in one place, single pane of glass, one-stop shop. That is the SageMaker Unified Studio. And that's what I will be showing you here today. Now let's just zoom in a little bit when it comes to identity and access management. I'm going to have a specific focus in this talk on identity. Okay. Now, when you start learning about AWS, what do we teach you in an AWS training course? Usually you say, oh, here's the identity and access management service, right? Okay, we've come a very long way in AWS from 2006 when we launched the S3 service. I mean, in 2006, all the way to 2011, when it comes to identity, there was just the root user, there was one account. And then identity and access management service came along in 2011, and now you've got the ability to put 5,000 users into one account. Wow. Okay, but we have moved on a lot since then. And we teach our customers best practice is you shouldn't just have one AWS account for all your workloads. You should have many, many, many AWS accounts. Any production environment in AWS, in any organization of any size, is probably going to have 10, 20, 50, 500, 2,000, who knows, AWS accounts. And you're going to use those AWS accounts as boxes to separate one thing from another thing. And now you have a problem if your understanding of identity is restricted to an identity and access management service group or user. Well, if you have a user that needs access to multiple accounts, how in the world are you going to manage that? You're going to go and create a user in every single one of those accounts for the same person, Fred. Okay, Fred 1, Fred 2, Fred 3. What are you going to do? And then, and if you do it that way, you're going to create some other problems for yourself because now you have multiple sources of truth. So Fred has an account, probably in Active Directory, in your data center on a domain controller. That's a source of truth, but now there's some other sources of truth as well. You don't want that. The way we solve this problem is by using Identity Center. So what we do with Identity Center is we say Identity Center is going to be the centralized service that we use in AWS to bring all of these accounts and all of these identities and all of these roles and everything together under one roof. And that is what I'm going to demonstrate for you as well, how you can use that with SageMaker Unified Studio. Okay. So let's begin by doing some demos. This is where it gets interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over the screen. Hopefully this is going to work. Demo. Okay, I'm pressing the demo button, but nothing's happening. I'm going to need some help from the back. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Okay, right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to log in to AWS, and I've gone and set up 3 different accounts here. The first thing I'm going to do, and by the way, I'm not going to cheat and not do multi-factor authentication in a security demo, okay? So you're going to have to bear with me. I'm going to have to copy and paste the stuff from my password manager. I got like a set of accounts I'm going to use here. So the account I'm logging in with here is my management account. My computer went to sleep, so that happens. Let me just get my password manager out and log into this. So I'm going to log in. Just drag that up a little bit. There's my password. And now for my multi-factor authentication code. And by the way, when you use Identity Center, these multi-factor authentication settings are enabled by default. And something that I can't help but emphasize is just, it's the easiest thing that you can do to increase your security posture by doing almost nothing. Just turn it on. And if you use Identity Center, you don't even have to turn it on because it's turned on by default, right? So you have multi-factor authentication. I've logged in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the management console of the management account in my organization. And I'm just going to show you what the demo structure in terms of accounts look like. So I'm going to go to the organization service in AWS. And then what I'm going to do is just show you here, I've got 2 accounts. I've got the management account, which is the one that we're in right now. And then I've got an account I created called the SageMaker account, which is separate from that. It's just a member account inside of this organization as well. Now, what I've done is when you go and set up Identity Center, what you do, and this, by the way, is called the Identity Center service now. It used to be called the single sign-on service. So sometimes people use that interchangeably as the single sign-on Identity Center, but now it's called Identity Center, so I'm going to refer to it by that name. If you go to the Identity Center service inside of the management account, I just want to show you what the structure of this thing is. When you set it up for the first time, it is pretty straightforward. You just go through a number of steps and you set it up. One of the very important things that you need to understand is you need to make a choice on where is the source of truth for identity for your entire organization going to come from. And you can actually see that if you go to the settings on one that's been set up already. If I go down here and I say I want to customize or change my identity source, you see you've got 3 choices. Now, the one that I'm using here is kind of the built-in one. It says Identity Center Directory. So in the management account in my organization, I've got this directory built into AWS that I'm using as a source of truth. For production environments in enterprises, you probably never touch that because you already have a source of truth for all your users. It's probably an Active Directory domain controller in your data center. Well, you can use that. You can tell it over here to use Active Directory, right? And another thing that a lot of customers are using is an external identity provider. So if you have something like Okta, or even if you have Entra ID from Microsoft, or anything that supports SAML 2.0 federated authentication, you can set it up with an external identity provider right here in Identity Center. So you get all of those users and all of those groups in Active Directory or in wherever those things live. And then once you've configured it and you've set it up, what will happen is it will take all of those users, if you set it up correctly, and it will propagate those users and their attributes and group memberships and everything into Identity Center. And it's going to be a sort of, if I could use the term, shadow copy of those users and groups inside of the Identity Center instance, inside of the management account of your organization. So let me just show you what that looks like. If I go down to Identity Center, you can see here I've got some groups, and I try to keep it as simple as possible for this demo. I got administrators and data scientists. And I got some users, and there is a machine learning admin user, and then there is a machine learning user. Okay, the other one there at the top is just the admin user that I'm using to administer my management account. Now, the way that all of this stuff works together, right? So you've got your data source of truth, say, in your data center. You got your management account over here, and you've got all these other AWS accounts in your organization. And remember I told you everything works with roles. So what you now need to do with Identity Center is you need to tie all of those things together. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to go and define a set of permissions that a group of users in your organization is going to have in specific accounts in AWS. And the way that you do it is you go down into permission sets over here, and you basically go and create a permission set. I'm not going to demo that part. It's fairly quick. All you do is you go and select a bunch of AWS policies. Those are IAM policies. They can be AWS managed policies. They can be custom policies that you wrote yourself. You're going to go and create those policies here in the permission set section, and then you're going to say, these policies together is going to constitute all of the permissions that I want my machine learning users or my data scientist users or whatever to have. So I've got a set of policies. I've created one of those permission sets here called data scientist. And then what you can do is you can say, okay, now that I've got that, I would like to define what accounts in my organization I would like those permission sets to propagate to. And when those permission sets propagate to those accounts, what happens is it creates a new role inside of every account that you select here. So what you do is you say, in my case, I only got 2 accounts, so it's nothing special. But if I just go and say I want that account there could have been a lot more. I say assign users or groups. I can now say, okay, so this account, or that account, and that account, and that account, I'm taking these groups, saying I want these groups coming from my data source of truth. So data scientists, and I want those data scientists to have what permission policies inside of all of the accounts that I've selected. So I'm going to say, let's take my data scientists and go next, and then say submit. I'm not going to click submit here. What would normally happen, I've already done it, is it will go and create roles inside of all those AWS accounts in your organization. And if you go into the roles part of Identity and Access Management Service, you'll see they're called AWS Reserved, Single Sign-On, blah, 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 right? So those roles are actually created. You don't have to go into your account, one by one and creating all of those permissions. So you click, bang, it's done, it will propagate, and it's beautiful. Now, the next thing I need to do is I'm going to go to, let me just switch back real quick. I think we're about to do demo number 2. Let's go over. Yeah. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how, once you've got Identity Center set up, you can now go and log in as the SageMaker, shall we say the administrator in the SageMaker account, and go and set up this thing called a SageMaker Unified Studio domain. So let me just switch back to the demo. Once again, okay, I have to press it a few times. Okay, so let me get the correct browser profile here. So I'm going to use the SageMaker admin. And I'm going to do this So there's my machine learning admin. Log in. Just let it refresh, okay. Go back, get my password manager out, log in, password, and my multi-factor auth code, which I did not disable for this demo because you should all use it. Okay, so now I'm signed in here, and I'm going to go to the SageMaker account. And by the way, if for those of you who've never seen this, just as a matter of interest, what you see on the screen here that I'm using, that is the Identity Center sign-in portal. So once you set up Identity Center, you tell your users to go to a URL. When I was typing my credentials, you give them a URL, they go to that URL, and that's how they sign into AWS services. And then what it will show over there, you can see there's an account at the top and an account below it. Those are the two accounts in my organization that I gave this particular user access to. And you see there administrators and CGML admin. Those are the permission sets that I publish for them. Okay, so I'm using that system myself to show you this demo. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the SageMaker account as the SageMaker administrator. And once I'm in there, what I'm going to do, and this is actually counterintuitive, I'm not going to the SageMaker service, although that will probably also work. I'm going to a thing called the Data Zone service. And now when I click on that, you see something very interesting. It says SageMaker. Wait a minute, then you just type Data Zone. Okay, so SageMaker Unified Studio is built on Data Zone. Just remember that. If you want to ensure that you get, that a lot of things are happening, there are many moving parts. I think if you, while I was preparing this demo, you still had to type Data Zone to get to the right service. From now on, going forward, you'll probably just be able to type SageMaker. But what you want to do as soon as you get in there, you'll see that there's a burger menu of sorts. If you've not set up a domain before, you can set up one now. I've already set some up, so I'll just jump into domains. And I got a bunch of them there. Now, what exactly is a domain in SageMaker Unified Studio? Now, I'm just going to read this from my cheat sheet because it's important to get this right. I want to do it succinctly. A domain is an organizing container that connects users, their projects. When I say users, I'm thinking data scientists, right? The guys who don't want to be the learning AWS management console and all that stuff. Users, their projects, and shared assets under a common administrative and security boundary. Okay, so in order to use this, you got to create a domain, and I'm going to set one up for you. It's a lot easier than you might think. So let's say create domain. I'm going to go here through the setup. You'll see that one of the things that you're going to need when you set up a domain is a VPC. Now, I've already set one up, but if you haven't got one set up already, we actually have CloudFormation templates built in here. If you go and say create VPC, that's going to spin up a CloudFormation stack and create one for you. Okay. I've created one already, so I'm not going to do that, but it is built in and quite nice to have. And then if I open up the settings over here, I can give the domain a name. So I guess I'm going to call this one, I don't know how many I've created, domain 6. You probably want to give it something a little bit more descriptive than that. And then you'll see that there are these roles. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the roles. There are many of them. Once again, I recommend you familiarize yourself with how roles work in AWS. But there's the domain execution role, and there's the domain service role. Now, the domain execution role is the role that is used whenever something needs to be done on behalf of some user inside of this domain. As for the domain service role, that's more sort of like, control plane, background management tasks that the domain does. There are several others, but the most important one is probably here, the domain execution role. And you can see over here, you get the option to encrypt your data, right? And you can go and customize your encryption settings. And what I highly recommend you do, while it goes off and creates a domain, I'll show you in KMS what you can do, is to use a customer managed KMS key. I'll explain to you why a little bit later. Okay, so we're just going to go through all of this over here. and I'm going to select the VPC I want to use. I created the machine learning VPC, and I'm going to tell it to use the private subnets in here, like so. And then I think we're pretty much ready to roll. So I'm going to say continue. And now what it does is it asks me for a sort of like a bootstrap user that I can give access to get into the SageMaker Unified Studio. And I'm going to give it the credentials or the name of my SageMaker machine learning admin user. Now, interestingly enough, all of this is integrated with Identity Center. And what you need to do here is to provide an email address. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look up my email address. I think I need to go over here for that user. See, SageMaker admin. Now, probably if this was a real person, you'd remember your email address. But I'm going to copy it and paste it in here. So if I hit that, you'll see that it actually populates that drop-down, and that comes from Identity Center. Okay. So I'm going to hit that and say create domain. While it's busy creating that, it only takes about 1 minute. Oops, let me quickly show you what you need to know about the key management service. I just want to point something out to you. When you get into the key management service, you'd be very tempted to just say, let's just use an AWS managed key. That's the default setting in a lot of cases. I'm going to beseech you not to do that, but to use customer managed keys. So you go in there and you create your own key. It costs $1 per month per key. I think you pay something like 3 cents, or don't quote me on that, but it's a few cents for 10,000 requests on that key. It's really, really affordable. Why am I telling you to use a customer managed key? There are 2 things that you probably want to do when you use keys. Okay? The first thing is you probably want to have role separation. That is to say, should the admin in the account be able to decrypt all the data just because they're the admin? No. Well, if you don't want that situation, create a customer managed key, because you can say, I want the following principles in AWS, roles, accounts, users, whatever, to administer this key. They can administer it, right? I want the following principles, roles, whatever in my account or other account, whatever principles in AWS to use the key. That is to say, to encrypt and decrypt using that key. You separate them, right? So that is the first thing that you want to do, and you can only do it if you use customer managed keys. And the other thing about this customer managed keys is you probably want CloudTrail logs. Somebody decrypted some data. Well, who did it, when did they do it, and what IP address did they do it from? You want that in CloudTrail? You're going to use a customer managed key. Can't do it with AWS managed. It's got to be customer managed. Okay. So that's the end of my little KMS talk. We now have ourselves a nicey little domain. So I think what I need to do next is I'm now going to go down in here, and I now need to go and add some users to this domain. So what I've got here in terms of users is I can say add. I'm going to say I want to add a single sign-on user, and I'm just going to go and select my data scientist. Once again, this is populated from Identity Center, right? So my data scientists to be in there as users, and when I do this, what happens is if that person with a data scientist group, anybody in that group logs into the Identity Center portal, they will see in their list of applications, which I'll show you shortly, that domain is now shown up as an application that they can click on. Right? So that is what this bit does here. It gives them that visibility so they can get access to it in their management portal. The next thing I just want to show you quickly here is a thing called blueprints. It's some of the key ingredients that you get with a unified domain. Blueprints really are CloudFormation templates. And this is this stuff that runs in the background. So you'll have a machine learning data scientist user inside of their domain doing stuff like spinning up, Jupyter notebooks and, SQL database, Athena queries and whatever. All of that stuff requires resources to be created. Well, how are they going to be created? Well, they get created by using CloudFormation. CloudFormation uses, basically these blueprints. These are CloudFormation templates. And you can make your own, or you can use some of the canned food that we provide. We also have a thing here called project profiles. and we provide 3 out of the box, and these project profiles are just collections of blueprints. And when your user logs into this unified domain studio area, then they will be able to go and create their own projects. But what projects will be able to create? Well, you decide right here, right now. What do you want to give them access to? Okay, so I'm just going to say I would like to give them access to all capabilities because I'm really generous and I'm not paying for this account myself. I'm going to just go and say what I want to do now. I think this is very important here. Before I do this one last little thing before I create it, I'm just going to go and say here I want to edit my template, and I want to specify what I want to call this thing. And one of the other things I just want to scroll through here real quick is to show you that you can specify if you want your users to use or have the ability to choose what region an account is going to run in if you have multiple accounts. I'm just going to leave it at the defaults. But there's one very important thing I want to show you. And this is, you'll see down here for blueprint parameters. Now those parameters are just CloudFormation template parameters, but there's one in particular I want to point out here that's super important. Go to 2, because the default setting for this is not set to what we want it to be. And it's enable trusted identity propagation. So you want to edit that thing and say, I don't want it to be false, I want it to be true. Now, why is it set to false by default? Because if you already have anything set up, a lot of services don't support this. So you probably don't want to just willy-nilly deploy it, but if you're setting up for the first time, this is an absolutely brilliant thing to have. I'm going to save it. Okay, right, so now that blueprint is going to be available. And I think that is pretty much everything that I wanted to show you over here in terms of the administrative experience of setting up this domain. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly jump back into my slide deck and I'm going to explain a concept to you which is trusted identity propagation before I go and log in as a user. So I'm trying to switch back to PowerPoint. Okay, right. See if we can get to the next slide. I have to do this. Okay, there we go. So what exactly is this trusted identity propagation? It's really cool. Now what it does basically do in a nutshell is it allows AWS services to securely pass a user's actual identity from identity center, machine learning user, data scientist, right? Across service boundaries rather than solely relying on IAM roles. So what's happening in this particular, I don't think, well, see, yeah, okay. I thought I would have a mouse pointer, but you'll just have to look at the explanation on the slide, right? So you've got this data scientist, and then they're going to go to their Identity Center portal. They're going to get that login page. They're going to authenticate and log in. Then what's going to happen is they're going to go to the application section, which is what I'm about to do next for you to demo. And you say, I got a SageMaker Unified Studio domain, click, and they're going to be launched into that environment. And then when they're in that environment, what they can do is to say, well, I think I need to do some work, so I'm going to create a project, or I'm going to work on another project that somebody else in my domain has created and given me access to. And then they go and say, maybe I want to go and create a Jupyter notebook. I'm going to put some code in there. They're going to run a query against an S3 bucket with some, data inside of that bucket. And then what's going to happen is that it's not going to show in the CloudTrail logs that that particular item in that bucket was accessed with a role. Well, it's going to show that it was accessed with a role, but there's going to be an extra little bit of information on there, and I'll show you at the end. I'm going to say, on behalf of. It's going to give you the Identity Center instance ID, and it's going to give you the user ID down to the actual person in meat space who's clicked on that thing to do that job, right? So it's not, you have to follow all these breadcrumbs anymore. That's effectively what trusted identity propagation enables you to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just switch back to my demo. And what I'm going to do is to show you inside of my account what I've set up in terms of S3 in order to make this work. So just before I access it, let me just show you what I got. Now I think I'm logged in here as the machine learning admin in the SageMaker account. So in my account, I got an S3 bucket created just for this reInvent demo. So it's a reInvent demo bucket, and it's got some data prefix in it. And then there's this file there, products 10,000 CSV, that I just downloaded from one of these websites where you can get some sample data to play around with when it comes to machine learning workloads. And I just shoved it into my bucket. Now, in order to use S3, the service, with trusted identity propagation, there's something you got to do. And every service that works with trusted identity propagation has a slightly nuanced version of what I'm about to show you. So it's not like every single service that supports trusted identity propagation does it like S3. Just this is the way that S3 does it. So if you want to use trusted identity propagation with S3, you go into Access, Management and Security, and you go to Access Grants. And what you're going to do is you're going to go and create an access grant. And you can see I've already created one here. I'm going to say View Details. And you can see there that I've given a grant to a very specific S3 bucket that I just shown you. I wasn't particularly specific there. I just said, well, the whole bucket. And the permissions I've given is read and write permissions. Probably you just give read permissions in most cases like this. And the, shall we say, the Identity Center instance up here, can you see? That is linked to it. And the identity of the user inside, or the group inside of Identity Center that has access to it, I've also given access to over here. Now, I'm not going to go through every step here when you create a grant. Every service will have their own specific way of doing it, so I don't want to dive too deep into the S3 specifics of it, but that is how you get S3 buckets to work with TIP. So now that we've got all that set up, let me go into the actual user experience, and this is where it gets really interesting. This is really the best part, to see how it all comes together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and log in as an actual user. So let me just quickly see if I go into my user profile. That's a user over there. So I'm going to do the whole password thing again. So that's my user. Log in. And by the way, you see up there in my, my URL, when you tell your users where to log in, that's what you're going to give them. Now, you can prettify it. It doesn't have to be ugly like that. You can use custom names and all kinds of stuff, but you're going to give them a URL like that, and that is where they go to when they want access to anything AWS related. There's a one-stop shop, and then they'd be asked to authenticate. And over here, the reason why my authentication has an AWS logo on it is because this is basically, I'm going to be logging into Identity Center using an Identity Center directory. But if, say, for example, you use a third-party identity provider with SAML, this page will direct you to log into your identity provider page. Then you log into your identity provider page, you get a cookie, give you a signed SAML claim, and then that is presented back into Identity Center. And you take all the attributes that you need to take from your identity provider into Identity Center as well. So this is a highly simplified version of what it looks like, but in an enterprise, you would probably use something like an identity provider with a third-party service, right? So I'm just going to sign in here as my normal little SageMaker user. I'm going to stick that in here real quick. Just refresh the page and try again. Okay, here we go. So, password and multi-factor auth over there. Okay. Right, so now we're signed in as the user. And what you can do as a user, in this case, I just happen to have given my user access to some of this stuff as well. Normally, you wouldn't necessarily have to do this. You can do it if you want to. So if you have users who need access to just go into the management console and do stuff in different accounts, you can do it right here. But what you probably want to do for a lot of them who can't be particularly bothered to learn how to use AWS is you just want some applications. And what you'll see over here is that I now have every one of these things would be a SageMaker unified domain, and every one of those domains that I created inside of my console earlier as the admin are now showing to this user here because I have published them, but when I set up, you remember when I created the domain, it says what users have access to it, and I said my machine learning users group or data scientist user group, and I've done it a few times for that user group, which is why you see several of these things. Normally, you're not necessarily going to see a load of them, just because I've done this a few times when I was practicing my little demo for reInvent. So the name of this might not be particularly helpful. You'll see there's the domain ID. So there's DZD, blah, 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 blah. Might not mean much to your user. You can go and rename this if you want to in Identity Center. So let me just show you what you can do if you want that to be a little bit more meaningful. I'm just going to go in here and say, I'm going to go back into my management account, like this, and I'm back in Identity Center. And then what I can do in Identity Center is I can now go to Applications. I can go and find this application. So I believe that is this one over here that we just created. I can just change the name. I'm just going to call this Domain 6. Very imaginative. So you probably want to use something a little bit more meaningful for your particular workloads. Let me just go back down here to the user. If I now hit the refresh button over here, you'll see that that has now changed to reflect domain 6, DZD, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here's the piece de resistance. This is what your users will see. They can't be asked to learn how to be an admin in AWS. They just go into their portal and they click on this. And that will take them to the SageMaker Unified Studio single sign-on page. Every domain gets its own single sign-on page. You say sign in with single sign-on. It will just do all the authentication for you. And there it is. There is your SageMaker Unified Studio environment, and that is what your user will be working with. You're not going to be working with the AWS Management Console. You'll be working in here. And everything that you could possibly need can be made available for you here. There's all kinds of things that you can do to govern this. You can go and set up other domain users. If you've been given admin rights in here, you can go and build things. You can discover things. I'm not going to make this talk about SageMaker Unified Studio. You can probably find some other talks about that. This is specifically about the identity and how to set up all of that. But what you'll probably want to do next, if you're a user, is you now want to go and create a project. And the project is sort of the heart of what you do inside of Unified Studio. So if I now go and say I want to create a project, you can give that project a name, Cool Bananas, or something like that. The project profiles that are available to you, that are displayed in here that you can now see, are only the ones that the admin has made available for you. Remember when we created the project profile? Project profiles are made up of blueprints. Blueprints are CloudFormation templates. So these are all the things that's available. You can now go and build stuff in your infrastructure, but you don't get exposed to CloudFormation. You don't get exposed to any of that stuff. It all happens in the background, and it's completely transparent to the data scientist user. And all you need to do now is say, I want to have one, let's select all capabilities and continue. And now you are even able to edit some of those parameters. Remember, I said enable trusted identity propagation. It's set to true. If I now go and say continue, I can say create project. Now, I'm not going to do this right here, right now, because it's going to go and spin up a lot of stuff. It's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to show you one I baked earlier, okay? But this will basically show exactly what I've created earlier would be the same that would be created now if we did it live. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back in here. So let me just get out of this particular environment. I'm going to go back into my, I think I'll just use domain 4. Okay, I shouldn't have signed out. That'll teach me. Live demos. Okay. Just log in again. Right. Okay, so we're back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into domain 4. That's already got a project provisioned. So let me sign in. I can go up here and select the project. I think it was Cool Bananas. And now what I want to do is I want to go to a notebook. I think it was this one. Okay, so just take a moment. Okay. Do that. While we're waiting for that, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy and paste some code, Python, in there. And what this code is going to do is basically, I mean, if you're not into writing code, don't worry about this. It's basically just going to go and get some stuff from an S3 bucket, the one that I showed you earlier, and run a query against it and display it in the notebook. So, looks like it's fully initialized. Just get some of that code, handy dandy, available in my editor. I'm going to stick it into a cell here. Okay, it looks like this is ready to run. I'm just going to hit run. Okay. And there's gone, and it's gone and grabbed something out of my S3, bucket. Doesn't matter, it's just from some of the product information. It's boilerplate data, it doesn't matter. What does matter is the fact that I can now go and look at the breadcrumb trail and see exactly who did what with CloudTrail. So let me jump back into my machine learning admin. So I'm going to SageMaker admin. And I'm going to jump into the CloudTrail service, like so. Okay. I'm just going to go to event history. By the way, when you use CloudTrail, if you just go to event history, I just want to point out something. This is built in by default. You get it, it's in every account. But you should read the fine print. It says the event history shows you the last 90 days of management events, okay? If you want to get more than just 90 days and you want to get more than just management events, that is to say control plane operations, you probably want to go down here and create a trail to customize exactly what you're recording. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to search for that particular thing. I think that the attributes I'm looking for is event name. And the actual call that is made to S3 by the role on behalf of the user when you use the grants is a thing called get data access. So I'm going to do a search for that. And the latest one here is probably the one that we just did, 11:46. That was 2 minutes ago, so it's this one. And you can now look in the data over here and it will say, well, who did this? And you'll see here it was done by a role. Okay, but here's the interesting bit. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see this smoking gun over here. It says, on behalf of. Now, it does look a little bit Byzantine. It's got 2 bits of information, but it says user ID and identity store ARN. Just copy that and stick it into TextPad. And then I'll go back and show you, probably enlarge this a bit, just how you can map this back to Identity Center to the exact user that we were doing this as. So if I now jump back in here to my Identity Center management account, over here, I go to settings. If I go down here, you'll see there's an Identity Store ID. And if you look at the Identity Store ARN, there is the Identity Store ID. So you'll see D906, blah, blah, blah. It's a match, I promise. And then if you go to your users, you go and find, in this case it was the machine learning user. Let's expand that. You'll see it's got a unique user ID and Identity Center. And if I now go up here and I compare them, you will see that the user ID here that I got from CloudTrail is an exact match to the user ID over here. Okay, so that's the whole story in a nutshell. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that helps. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in the space. And if you want to use SageMaker Unified Studio, it can be a little bit daunting if you need to go and set that up as an admin and set it up securely. Hopefully what I've done in this presentation will take some of that unknownness about the whole process away and make it a little bit easier for you to understand what's going on. So, now we're just going to quickly go through the tell them what you told them. And I'm going to remind you of a few things that we talked about. So, first of all, you want to use Identity Center. You're still going to be using identity and access management for every one of those member accounts that you have in your organization. But the only thing in there that you're going to be using is going to be roles and permission policies. The users and groups in those accounts are pretty much going to be blank because everything will use Identity Center. Next, you want to ensure that you get your networking right. Now, what we discussed in this session was you do not want to expose your machine learning workloads to the public internet. So what can you do to protect yourself? Well, first of all, you can use VPC endpoints, no internet gateway. If you need access to the internet, go through a transit gateway attachment, and there'll be some centralized networking VPC, presumably, that's running all kinds of firewall stuff, which is another thing that we have there in the slide, which we didn't cover in the talk itself. Did you all know we have basically 4 kinds of firewalls inside of AWS? You know, security groups, network access control lists, they all go into a VPC, right? We also have a thing called a web application firewall, and then there's a network firewall that can do deep packet inspection. If you go into the VPC service, it's there. So your networking team will have some sort of a centralized networking account, which will be having a gateway going out to the internet, and they will probably have one of these network firewalls or something like that deployed in there to do deep packet inspection on everything going in and out from and to the internet. Encryption, make friends with the KMS service. It's a gift, people. I don't know if any of you have ever been in the minds of Moria with HSMs. I mean, if you've been in that world and you see the KMS service, it will blow your mind. It's a checkbox. You need FIPS 140-2 level 3 compliance. No more HSMs. There's just this KMS key, check, and you're done, right? And then finally, you want to ensure that you log all that stuff in CloudTrail. Get your CloudTrail log set up. Go and set up a CloudTrail trail. Learn how to use it and set it up correctly. It will make your life so much easier. So there are some of the key takeaways. Centralize user identity, isolate your workloads, and enable identity propagation with trusted identity propagation, and then start your journey. Now, there are a few, shall we call it, like and subscribe slides here. I'm from the training and certification team in AWS. If you want to learn anything else about what we do, I think it's the Developer Community Pavilion booth 1502. Please visit. We also have an e-learning platform you might or might not have heard of called Skill Builder, skillbuilder.aws. There's a ton of stuff in there. Okay, if you want to do online learning, we make it available to customers. We also have this QR code that you can scan if you want to see stuff in Skill Builder that's brand new, that's been announced at this conference. You can go to that place and log into Skill Builder, and it will take you to that. And then finally, anybody here is certified with AWS with any certifications? Sorry, I think I'm one slide behind. My apologies. Yeah. So let me just go back there. If you wanted to scan that one, I'll take a picture of it. I'll just give you a second. And then finally, validate your skills. If you want to get a 50% discount on your next AWS certification exam, well, you can get access to it inside of there. Just one little catch, you have to take the exam before the end of January next year. But 50% is 50% off, and that would work even, I think, for the advanced and the specialized. Those are $300. So, saving $150 is pretty sweet. That's it. That's all I got for you. Could you please fill out the, what do you call it, the evaluation? Before I do that, I'm just going to be a bit cheeky. I don't know if I'll be at reInvent again, but I'm going to take a selfie. So if you guys could all do a thumbs up or smile or pull a face or something. Awesome. Show this to my mom. Thank you for attending my talk, folks.